Hello, comic fans. Like we used to say, then it's Christmas and the year is done. Well, I'm well aware that we are still in early December and the year is actually not done, but comic wise, for me it is. There won't be too many new comics in the last weeks of 2025, so I say let's start the roundup, remembering, presenting, and rating my fave comics of the last year. Absolutely cheeky, part-wise unsubstantiated, part-wise backed up with rock-solid arguments, but still totally subjective, of course. Like I've been doing these kind of videos at the end of each year for a while now. This time I'll do 4 videos, each of them in English and in German. The latter ones you can watch on my German YouTube channel Örls Waschmaschine. So actually there will be 8 videos in total. Anyways, today I pulled out older and old comics that have been republished in new collections in 2025. These are my ranks 20 up to 11 in this regard. The top 10 of old wine in new bottles will follow in a later video. On rank 20, there's a Franco-Belgian classic from the pages of Spirou. Dearly remembered from my childhood, but it's not only about nostalgia, it's just still a compelling, nice sci-fi comic called pt.1, or in German, Die Minimenschen. A group of villagers came in contact with a mysterious meteorite which made them shrunk to mini people, living now their mini lives in their mini hideout, but with serious high tech. Especially their flying machines are some of the most elegant in all comic worlds, maybe only surpassed by the wonderful tech stuff in Yokotsuno by Roger Leloup. Volume number 3 of this long-running series collects comics from the early 70s. I don't know if there is an English translation, but I'm afraid not. This one is the German version published by Zack Edition. Next up is Red Knight by Hanawa Katsuishi. Well, I read a shitload of crazy manga the last year, almost all of them in similar sized trade paperbacks, curated and translated by Ryan Homberg. Mr. Homberg seems to work for many publishers simultaneously, so these books have been published not only by Breakdown Press, like Red Knight, but also by New York Review Comics and most notably by the smudge imprint of Living the Line. Red Knight stood out of the bunch not only because of its meticulous drawing style. While some of the stories reveal that this anthology collection contains some early efforts by Hanawa, most of them are just masterworks in a very dense and disturbing style. They are horror manga drawn with almost manic yet masterful cross-hatching. Hanawa shows and exaggerates the dark sides of the samurai lifestyle, for the lack of better words, including the suppression and torture of women. But somehow almost all of the characters in these short stories are victims. The male characters are victims almost just the same, victims of society or their own instinct-driven delusions and perverted obsessions. Rank 18 is Burton and Sip, drawn by Jose Ortiz, written by Antonio Segura. Originally, these funny sci-fi short stories were created in the late 80s for the Spanish magazine Zona 84. Burton is the parody of the typical rugged, unrefined, earthy Hollywood anti-hero, while his buddy Zip is a trigger-happy cyborg, hence his name, Zip, or Sype. Together, they experience all sorts of misadventures on the outskirts of future underground worlds. I knew these stories from Schwermetall, the German metal law, but now I'm very glad to have all of their shenanigans in one nice hardcover collection. Then on 17, we have a Dutch espionage spoof. Agent 327, written and drawn by Martin Lodewijk. It's finally out in its entirety of 20 neat albums in German. What can I say? You could probably compare it best to those old Mad movie parodies. Wordy, funny, whimsical, hilarious, but unfortunately not available in English, I guess. Unlike the next item on my list, Wednesday's Comics. In 2009, DC published a series of newspaper-formatted weekly anthologies with serialized comics. So you got one page each of many superhero stories by top-notch creators like Michael Allred, Neil Gaiman, Amanda Conner, and Kyle Baker. Probably the best story is Carl Kerschel's take on The Flash. But overall, the hardcover collection of these weeklies is a fun read, even for one like me, who doesn't read superhero titles too often. And it definitely helps that this book is hugely oversized and a great presentation of its splendid content. Well, if you forget about the Teen Titans bit, which was bloody awful. Savage Dragon. It has not only gotten great hardcover reprints in English in the last couple of years, but a new reprint series in German as well. The so-called Zauberstern Verlag has a peculiar roster of very diverse titles, from The Phantom to Flash Gordon, which they reprint in more or less monthly magazines. The hands-down most important of their efforts so far has been Eric Larsen's Savage Dragon. A dozen of these huge colorful mags has come out since 2024. A quite perfect vessel for Larsen's bonkers and idiosyncratic green superhero. Great fun with a lot of oomph, explosions, and in-your-face violent slapstick. On rank 14, it's Turtle Time. Turtle Adventure Time, to be exact. You can relive the first episodes of the original animated series with these comics. So, the very first comics in this thick hardcover collection by IDW are mere comic adaptations of the TV series. But very soon, the heroes in a half-shell had their own crazy ways and adventures that only have been told through these comics in the Archie series. I was initially hesitant to buy this book because I was afraid it could be too silly and frankly too childish, but it turned out it was exact the right dose of silly and childishness for me. And lots of freewheeling art. Maybe a bit too amateurish for others, I dig it a lot. Back to old Europe with Henry Vaughan's legendary hero, Bob Moraine, and first of all to William Vance's adaptations. The same William Vance who drew 13 later on. In the Bob Moraine stories from the late 60s and early 70s, we can observe his rather early drawings, constantly improving his very own yet nicely familiar style. The adventures of Bob Moraine and his buddy Bill Ballantine explore all kinds of pulp tropes like crime, espionage, horror, treasure hunts, voodoo, and a lot more, and of course beautiful women. I mean, just look at these pages, you get what you see, and in my eyes, that's a lot. On rank 12, and I don't know if this actually should belong into this category, but it's my list, so who cares? Promethea by Alan Moore and J.H. Williams was published, among other formats, in 3 beautiful slipcased, oversized absolute editions by Moore's very own label, America's Best Comics. Unfortunately, years ago, the first volume of these absolute editions ran out of stock everywhere. It became a white whale, so to speak. I bought the other two absolutes nevertheless, and my patience was now rewarded by DC, who reprinted the first sought-after volume in their Black Label line. I guess it's completely identical with the old America's Best Comics version, with the exception of the different label logo, of course. Well, nice move, DC. Here's my applause and rank 12 for this beautiful publication. And the last book for today's video, rank 11 of old comics in new editions that came out in 2025, is the third and concluding collection of Jordi Bernet's Torpedo. It's the German edition by the so-called Alpha Verlag. Enrique Anche Abuli's stories of this anti-hero of all anti-heroes amongst even more worthless folks, so that you find yourself rooting for that piece of human crap. These stories are still great and will always entertain the somehow shadier parts of my brain. And Jordi Bernet is just the one and only Jordi Bernet, one of the best cartoonists, not only in black and white, but particularly in black and white. So folks, this is it for now. Next up will be a video with the ranks 20 up to 11 in terms of new comics within new books from 2025. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.